He had reached the point where a man tries to make up his mind and to accept that which rends his heart. He was explaining to himself that there was no longer any reason why Marius should return, that if he intended to return, he should have done it long ago, that he must renounce the idea. He was trying to accustom himself to the thought that all was over, that he should die without having beheld that gentleman again. But his whole nature revolted. His aged paternity would not consent to this. "Well," said he, this was his doleful refrain, "he will not return." His bald head had fallen upon his breast, and he fixed a melancholy and irritated gaze upon the ashes on his hearth. In the very midst of his reverie, his old servant Basque entered and inquired:— "Can monsieur receive Monsieur Marius?" The old man sat up, erect, pallid, and like a corpse which rises under the influence of a galvanic shock. All his blood had retreated to his heart. He stammered:— "Monsieur Marius what?" "I don't know," replied Basque, intimidated and put out of countenance by his master's air. "I have not seen him. Nicolette came in and said to me: 'There's a young man here, say that it is Monsieur Marius.'" Father Gillenormand stammered in a low voice:— "Show him in." And he remained in the same attitude, with shaking head, and his eyes fixed on the door. It opened once more. A young man entered. It was Marius. Marius halted at the door, as though waiting to be bidden to enter. His almost squalid attire was not perceptible in the obscurity caused by the shade. Nothing could be seen but his calm, grave, and strangely sad face. It was several minutes before Father Gillenormand, dulled with amazement and joy, could see anything except a brightness, as when one is in the presence of an apparition. He was on the point of swooning. He saw Marius through a dazzling light. It was certainly he. It certainly was Marius. At last, after the lapse of 4 years, he grasped him entire, so to speak, in a single glance. He found him noble, handsome, distinguished, well grown, a complete man, with a suitable mien and a charming air. He felt a desire to open his arms, to call him, to fling himself forward. His heart melted with rapture. Affectionate words swelled and overflowed his breast. At length all his tenderness came to the light and reached his lips, and by a contrast which constituted the very foundation of his nature, what came forth was harshness. He said abruptly:— "What have you come here for?" Marius replied with embarrassment:— "Monsieur." M. Gillenormand would have liked to have Marius throw himself into his arms. He was displeased with Marius and with himself. He was conscious that he was brusque, and that Marius was cold. It caused the good man unendurable and irritating anxiety to feel so tender and forlorn within, and only to be able to be hard outside. Bitterness returned. He interrupted Marius in a peevish tone:— "Then why did you come?" That "then" signified: "If you do not come to embrace me." Marius looked at his grandfather, whose pallor gave him a face of marble. "Monsieur—" "Have you come to beg my pardon? Do you acknowledge your faults?" He thought he was putting Marius on the right road, and that the child would yield. Marius shivered. It was the denial of his father that was required of him. He dropped his eyes and replied:— "No, sir." "Then," exclaimed the old man impetuously, with a grief that was poignant and full of wrath, "what do you want of me?" Marius clasped his hands, advanced a step, and said in a feeble and trembling voice:— "Sir, have pity on me." These words touched M. Gillenormand. Uttered a little sooner, they would have rendered him tender, but they came too late. The grandfather rose. He supported himself with both hands on his cane. His lips were white, his brow wavered, but his lofty form towered above Marius as he bowed. "Pity on you, sir. It is youth demanding pity of the old man of 91. You are entering into life, I am leaving it. You go to the play, to balls, to the café, to the billiard hall. You have wit, you please the women, you are a handsome fellow. As for me, I spit on my brands in the heart of summer. You are rich with the only riches that are really such. I possess all the poverty of age, infirmity, isolation. You have your 32 teeth, a good digestion, bright eyes, strength, appetite, health, gaiety, a forest of black hair. I have no longer even white hair. I have lost my teeth. I am losing my legs. I am losing my memory. There are 3 names of streets that I confound incessantly: the Rue Charette, the Rue de Chaume, and the Rue Saint Claude. That is what I have come to. You have before you the whole future full of sunshine, and I am beginning to lose my sight, so far am I advanced into the night. You are in love, that is a matter of course. I am beloved by no one in all the world, and you ask pity of me? Parbleu, Molière forgot that. If that is the way you jest in the courthouse, messieurs the lawyers, I sincerely compliment you. You are droll." And the octogenarian went on in a grave and angry voice:— "Come now, what do you want of me?" "Sir," said Marius, "I know that my presence is displeasing to you, but I have come merely to ask one thing of you, and then I shall go away immediately." "You are a fool," said the old man. "Who said that you were to go away?" This was the translation of the tender words which lay at the bottom of his heart. "Ask my pardon. Throw yourself on my neck." M. Gillenormand felt that Marius would leave him in a few moments, that his harsh reception had repelled the lad, that his hardness was driving him away. He said all this to himself, and it augmented his grief, and as his grief was straightway converted into wrath, it increased his harshness. He would have liked to have had Marius understand, and Marius did not understand, which made the good man furious. He began again:— "What? You deserted me, your grandfather? You left my house to go no one knows whither, you drove your aunt to despair, you went off, it is easily guessed, to lead a bachelor life. It's more convenient to play the dandy, to come in at all hours, to amuse yourself. You have given me no signs of life, you have contracted debts without even telling me to pay them, you have become a smasher of windows and a blusterer, and at the end of 4 years, you come to me, and that is all you have to say to me." This violent fashion of driving a grandson to tenderness was productive only of silence on the part of Marius. M. Gillenormand folded his arms, a gesture which with him was peculiarly imperious, and apostrophized Marius bitterly:— "Let us make an end of this. You have come to ask something of me, you say? Well, what? What is it? Speak." "Sir," said Marius, with the look of a man who feels that he is falling over a precipice, "I have come to ask your permission to marry." M. Gillenormand rang the bell. Basque opened the door halfway. "Call my daughter." A second later, the door was opened once more. Mademoiselle Gillenormand did not enter, but showed herself. Marius was standing mute, with pendant arms and a face of a criminal. M. Gillenormand was pacing back and forth in the room. He turned to his daughter and said to her:— "Nothing. It is Monsieur Marius. Say good day to him. Monsieur wishes to marry. That is all. Go away." The curt, hoarse sound of the old man's voice announced a strange degree of excitement. The aunt gazed at Marius with a frightened air, hardly appeared to recognize him, did not allow a gesture or a syllable to escape her, and disappeared at her father's breath, more swiftly than a straw before the hurricane. In the meantime, Father Gillenormand had returned and placed his back